Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of The Round Table. I am Danny Ellyson. I am your host, and I am joined tonight by my panelists and very, very close friends, Mr. Derrick Grayson,
On mute.
Slowinski, and Miss
Can't hear you,
Josie.
Danny. Can't hear you.
On.
Can anybody hear Danny?
I can hear you.
Brian can hear me.
Well, I can't hear anything. Raise your hands if y'all can hear me. All right, we just can't hear you. So go ahead and go ahead and start, Danny. We'll fix our volume problem here in a minute.
All right, so I'm sure we're going to have to do an edit to this sound piece. So let's start again. Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of The Round Table. My name is Danny Ellyson and I am your host, joined with panelists and friends of mine, Mr. Brian Slowinski, Derrick Grayson, and Josie Cruz. Sure that others will join us throughout the hour. Today is November 11th, United States Armed Forces Veterans Day here in the United States of America. We will cover several topics tonight, being that our federal elections, the shams within, the recount in the state of Georgia, and other political matters as it comes up in conversation. Welcome to the roundtable and join us as we discuss the issues of today. Mr. Derrick Grayson, do I have you on a sound check? I can see your voice moving. I can't hear your voice, Derrick.
Can't either.
All right. Well, while we work on getting you back in, Derrick, Mr. Slowinski, I'm going to come to you. Give me a 2-minute cap of how you're feeling right now with the elections.
Well, thanks for having me. First off, I'm wearing a United States Army hat in honor of all of our veterans, including my wife, who's a veteran, and a lot of my uncles who fought in World War II who were in Army. My dad was Navy. Thank you, all the veterans out there, for your service. Freedom isn't free. Now, as far as the election goes, I think we're still way up in the air. I think that the media has decided who they want to be president, and they're pushing that narrative. I'm hoping that the court system will actually come to its senses and actually start making sure that everybody that voted fairly is represented. Those who voted unfairly should not be represented, and those who are taking advantage of the system, those votes should not be counted.
Absolutely agreed. I don't know of many people that would disagree with that. Derrick, do we have you back yet? Still no sound, Derrick. We're having technical issues over there on Mr. Grayson's network. Hopefully we'll get that figured out here shortly. I'd like to welcome the rest of our other hosts here to the evening's round table. Miss Catherine Bernard, Mr. Alex Johnson, Candace Taylor, Scott Jones, Miss Geraldine. All of y'all welcome to the round table tonight. Alex, let's come to you first. Let's talk about some of the legalities that are taking place right now across many states at the federal level and the Supreme Court. Reference these election counts and issues that are happening. What say you?
Well, I will admit to start that I am no expert on election law, but I do know enough to know that ultimately what decides the election outcome is going to be the Electoral College. And if in some way the Electoral College does not show 270 votes for one of the candidates, then it'll go to the House of Representatives with 1 vote per state delegation in the House, which would be 26 needed to win. And I think that that's what a lot of people need to remember, that is how we choose our president in this country, is through the Electoral College. As much as, we hear about every vote counting, what it really comes down to is the Electoral College. That's the way that our system was designed. The various challenges and legal arguments that are going on now in multiple states, that requires that's very dependent on state law. That's very dependent on what evidence there is in those states, and also the state certification processes. I would like to just remind everyone who does not follow Georgia politics that 2 years ago, Stacey Abrams, who ran against our current governor, Brian Kemp, definitely refused to, I think she was saying she won the election even though she lost, and put a lot of attention on the idea of it being voter suppression or voter fraud, or that the Secretary of State somehow rigged the election. And those were the type of allegations coming 2 years ago from a Democrat towards Georgia's government. And I say that not to take one side or the other on whether or not fraud actually does happen or is happening or did happen then, but just to point out that ultimately there's the legal decision of whatever comes through the court process and the way that the law is interpreted. And there's also the political tactic that is often used and was, I think, originated probably with the at least in recent history, with the Democrats 2 years ago, constantly trying to claim that Republicans somehow cheated, and they use that to try to get turnout and raise money. So I think that a lot of people need to wait for seeing the actual evidence that's presented, and taking a side on fraud and such until information's gathered is not it's honestly not very useful legally, but it is something that politically is going to be in our consciousness probably for the next few months, if not the next 4 years.
Amen.
Well, absolutely. And I think you bring up several important points. And I think the largest shocker that I have found throughout this election season this year, Alex, is that truthfully how unaware and uneducated our voting base is of the process for an election. How many people drove straight with the AP's announcement and the declarations of the media who was president, and everybody just threw up their hands and said it's over without understanding the due process of law, specifically election law and how it works. This has not been decided. The media is obviously playing their games. Catherine Bernard, I want to come to you since we're on the legal basis of this, bring you in and give you a 5-minute spot. Let's talk to America. Let them know how they should feel about what's going on. You're still on mute, Catherine.
Sorry about that. Well, I have to echo a lot of what's already been said. At this point, things are up in the air. We don't know what's happening. And I do have a little bit of a story to share about just how ignorant so many of us are of election law. And, I'm not an election law expert, but I have done a couple of cases. I follow the Georgia proceedings pretty closely. I follow some other states. And yet I will admit, I was still shocked to find out that Arizona was still counting ballots. I think I had assumed that, Georgia has a 5 p.m. Friday deadline for military absentee ballots. And so I had assumed, I think that, most of the states would have had and wrapped everything up at the end of the week. And so when the media made their Biden call on Saturday, of course, we recognize that it's a narrative situation. They want it to happen. And so they want to push an advantage. But, I genuinely thought that at least the deadline had passed for those 4 states that they were relying on for that count. And so imagine my surprise when I'm reading the Washington Post, again, not an outlet known for its excessive sympathy to conservatives or Trump. And they've got an article about ballot curing in Arizona going on until Tuesday at 5 p.m. And, in reading it, we find out that Biden's lead is down to less than 15,000. This is as of Tuesday afternoon. As of yesterday, Biden's lead is down to less than 15,000 in Arizona, and they've got over 60,000 ballots left to count. So, I feel like I'm ping-ponging around with the rest of the country. We want to be sincere and look for truth. And, I had certainly heard some individual stories of fraud that were pretty troubling, but I think we have to remember individual stories of fraud happen in every single election. And you want to avoid being the kind of person who only cares about election fraud when your guy loses. And so I think I had paid so much attention to these individual situations, dead people voting in Georgia, or somebody having their ballot marked incorrectly in Arizona and being told to place it in a box rather than a scanner, that, I had missed this entire deadline issue for Arizona. And so, you do hear some people say, oh, well, that means we need more national control over voting. We need more of a standardized system. But, I would say this is the point where our federal system actually really shines, because when you're looking at having to do recounts of, just a couple of states versus a recount of the entire country, with 50 states and territories, it actually does make sense that, even if it's hard for someone in Georgia to keep track of every little vagary of Arizona or Pennsylvania, it still makes sense that each of those states, maintains responsibility for it. So I just had to tell that story on myself to show that, I consider myself pretty zeroed in on the election, but that had just completely gotten by me. And so I think it's real easy to just rely on the narrative that's being pushed, and that's why we're here on this call, because we're with the people who push back on that narrative and recognize that if the government is involved, you should probably investigate it. Probably odds are something went wrong at some level.
Well said, Catherine. That's a fair assumption. If the government's involved, ask questions. Derrick, Grayson, welcoming you back in, sir. Did I just lose him? You're on mute, Derrick.
I'm
Can
here,
I hear you now?
man. I'm just discombobulated today. So
Well, good evening. I can hear you, sir. Welcome to the roundtable. As you've heard, we've opened the conversation talking on the lighter side on the very, very top of the election. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on how this past week is going.
so I tried to maintain Facebook silence, but I couldn't help myself with sharing some information. So let me just make maybe 3 points. So I saw a group of people. I went and put on my Make America Great T-shirt. On the back it says Hillary for prison, and then I had my Trump hat on. So I saw a group of black fellers, and they, man, why you got on a Trump hat? Trump lost. I said, Chief, stop listening to what you're being told. They are still counting votes, and certain states have not certified it. Oh no, he won. He won. He just did not want to hear what I said, and so I asked him a simple question: don't you want to know who truly won an election? Yes. I say, so if there are states that are still counting the vote, and both sides can go in with independent auditors and verify each and every vote that's counted, and if Trump is proven to be the victor, would you have a problem with that? Yes, because y'all cheated in the last election when you won. So that is the mindset that we are working with. And when I went into Applebee's for my Veterans Day free meal, of course, I had on my Trump hat and my T-shirt, Hillary for prison, make America great again. The bartender ignored me for about 10 minutes. I didn't say a word. Finally, he took my order. He was very snippy with me. I said, sir, I'm a veteran. Well, you're not getting everything for free. Sir, I know that. I'm just letting you know that the entree is, to be free. Well, I'm just letting you know. So it is the attitudes of these people that is going to be the problem. And now where we are, they are thinking that Trump has won. If you notice, no windows have been thrown. I mean, no windows have been broken. No cars have burned. None of that, and they were told that this would happen. I don't see the white nationalists. I don't see the KKK. I don't see any of that nefarious activity taking place under the assumption that Joe Biden is the winner. But I promise you, when this is said and done, I have told people remain calm, uh, be patient, uh, maintain your faithfulness, and I trust that Trump is doing the right thing and was prepared for that. That's why we see this happening. And I said, just have faith. And when Trump is announced the victor, you will see riots and looting. I guarantee it. And then the third point I want to make, and I'm going to shut up. I am spending from this point up until the primary of 2022 my time going John the Baptist on rhinos. Understand something. None of this had to happen. What we're dealing with here in Georgia, look, I'm in technology. I know that there are ways to create isolated or autonomous voting systems where people can cast their ballots and it not be fraudulent. The system is designed in such a way to allow that to happen. And we have a Republican led state here, the governor, secretary of state, they allowed this to happen. Rhinos allow these things to happen. And everybody is saying to me, well, Derrick, we need you to get on board and endorse Laughlin Kelly. I am not. I am not selling my soul for anyone at any price. They will not get my vote. And if anybody, they don't want, you shouldn't ask me because I'm going to make you mad and tell you the truth. Rhinos could have stopped the collusion. Trey Gowdy, Graham, Mitch McConnell, but they did not. Rhinos could have stopped the spying. They did not. They could have stopped all of it. They could have stopped everything that led up to the impeachment in those first 2 years, but they did not. And 40 of them quit to make room for the Republicans, the Democrats, to do what they do. If you have a bicameral body that's almost always evenly divided, and it takes 50% plus one to make something happen, that means somebody on the other side had to help the other side. Everything that hurts us in this country, Democrats have help on it. And that's what people don't understand. And when Trump is announced the victor, there needs to be an all out war on rhinos. End of story. And we are putting together what we call the Constitutional Coalition. And I'm hoping people like Catherine Bernard, Candace Taylor, Annette Davis Jackson, Danny Ellison, Josie Cruz, Brian Slowinski, we all get back in this race and we target rhinos. We spend from now till primary telling people who we are, what we're about, and why there needs to be a constitutional change in our government because we don't have one. And my last point, what if, you know what they did to Clarence Thomas? The man was brutalized by Joe Biden. We know what they did to Brett Kavanaugh. The man was brutalized by the gang. I forget the guy's name that was leading that charge. Why did Amy Barrett get through so easily? Could a deal have been made with the rhinos to allow them to let this cheating take place and getting her confirmed? And they deal with that. I'm telling you, rhinos want Trump gone, and the sooner the people realize that and understand that, the better we will be in this country. But I think more suffering is needed to make that happen. I'm sorry that I went so long, but I just had to get that out. That is my take on all that is happening, Rhino. Listen to me. Of all that is happening, Danny, if it wasn't for rhinos, we wouldn't be here where we are. Thank you.
Well, Derrick, I'm pretty good at interrupting people when necessary, but I think everything you were saying was valid to the point you slipped and called me a rhino. So, Josie Cruz, how are you feeling? Let's check the temperature in the room, and we're going to go around and give everybody equal time. So, Josie, how are you feeling about the election nationally?
Should I put the volume here?
No, go ahead.
No? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I got two questions, right? One is, are these people ignorant or are they doing this in purpose to mess us up? That's one question. And the second question is, why so many candidates, knowing that we are going through a fraud voting, we don't have the results, why so many of them already concede to the other candidate, knowing that this is a fraudulent election? So that's the two of my questions. But we can answer that later, you guys. Somebody can light me in this. But this whole process reminds me of, I hate to say it, but it reminds me the same strategy, the same method that they implemented in Venezuela. They put it in here, but they perfectionated it here. Okay, over there, dead people voted. Illegal people, I mean, immigrants from other countries not being Venezuelan citizens, they voted. So they manipulated through the, like Derrick was saying, through the computer system, everything. And the only difference that I see here in America is each state have the control of the each election, right? In Venezuela is national in one. If all the result goes to one office, to one committee, okay? So that's easy for them to flip easily the country. But I mean the results, and then get the results that they want to perpetuate the socialists and the communists in power. I'm gonna leave it there so I can talk later a little more.
All right, Josie, thank you so much for coming in. And you bring up a point that resonates with me. And I think that what we're seeing nationally is the evidence of relationships between parental and juvenile units slowly being pulled apart. The raising in a household is starting to show, or the lack thereof. Candace Taylor, welcome to tonight's show. We're going to let you come on in. What's the temperature for you? How are you feeling?
Well, hey, everybody. It's been a crazy week this week. Hey, Josie. Hey, Derrick. It's been a crazy week. I'm tired. I'm back at work 100% full time. And so I've had a lot of catching up to do there. And I did take a couple of days. I had some doctor's appointments with the kids and got that done and rested. I collapsed after I have campaigned so hard for 8 months. And I don't know about y'all, but I was just worn out. And putting 50,000 miles in my car and going to all 159 counties, I was totally worn out. And I just collapsed. Well, anyway, so the last couple of days I have felt like this, okay, like what can I do? And the whole time I've had people calling me and wanting me to endorse, Kelly, wanting me to do all kind of things. And I just have listened. I know we got to keep the Senate red. I get that, but I really feel like the election isn't over. And so I was talking to somebody today and they said that they're going to recount all of the presidential votes in Georgia. But unless David Perdue files a lawsuit or somebody else files a lawsuit in the U.S. Senate election for Loeffler, they won't recount those votes. And I did an open press release earlier Friday, Saturday, because I watched my votes go up and down, and all my team did and my family did and people all over the state, they watched my votes do that. And I mean, I don't think I would have been in the top, anyway, but I would have been up higher based on what I saw my votes fluctuate. And so, when voters go out and they vote for you, you deserve to see how many people voted for you and all the hard work you did, and their vote matters and it should count. And so I really feel like there's something more than just absentee votes. I understand that you can rescan those, and I get all that, and the early votes can be rescanned. I get it. But there's something else. And I know there's all these, thing on the news about Hammer and the scorecard and all this stuff and the algorithms that change votes. There is something to that, because when you get votes from each county added, they don't subtract away. Even one time I went up 22,000 votes and came down 25. It doesn't work that way. And so I have a lot of concerns there. And I don't know that we're going to get answers in the U.S. Senate race, because they are recounting the presidential race, but I'm not going to file a lawsuit on anybody. So unless somebody files a lawsuit, I'm not going to recount our votes. So if I was Doug Collins, I would file a lawsuit, but I'm not going to do that because I don't feel like I'm, up at the top. But I do think that it's not fair. And I think that if they show that algorithm was there for the president election, they should go ahead and do it for everybody that ran. So that's kind of where I am. I mean, I'm praying for the country. I've been praying for the election in Georgia. It's embarrassing. I'm very embarrassed. And I'm watching even them calling on the resignation of the, Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger. I saw that and I was appalled. appalled because Kelly Loeffler only had her seat because of Brian Kent. And I was just appalled. I thought, how can you stand there and say you want his resignation? The only reason why you're sitting where you are is because of him. Now, am I pro Brian Kent right now? No. But I'm just saying that shows loyalty to me. And so for me, I'm only loyal to the people and to Jesus and my family. That's who my loyalty is to. But we all know Rhino's loyalty are supposed to be to each other. And Brian Kent was basically her campaign manager and went all over the state with her to get her support. And then for her to demand his resignation, it floored me. And I thought, wow. And so, I don't know. I mean, we need to keep the Senate red. We have to. And we're in a really bad way right now. We really are. We're in a bad way. And I wish the votes would be recounted in every one of our elections.
Well, Candace, I absolutely agree with you. A couple notes. I mean, Derrick, let's bring you in on this one. I want to know your opinion, actually. You know, when you look at the recount, Brad comes out and says, hey, guys, we're going to do this by hand. Now, granted, we could go and Scantron all of those, but if you scan them again, you're going to get the same results. Nothing's going to change, especially if there's an algorithm, level problem in the computer programming. Now, is it one that they're trying to make right of this and actually confirm what's going on by counting the paper ballot? Or in what Candace is mentioning, an attempt to recover and cover their 6 by fixing it and taking victory for fixing the said election?
They need to fix it by any means necessary. Now let me share something with you because I heard this talked about. In Georgia, you can recall politicians, but most of the voting public are not even aware of the process. So when Loeffler and Perdue went to ask for his resignation, that was pure theater because later Raffensperger came back and said, that's not happening. Well, I know it wasn't happening, but it was theater for Perdue and Loeffler. However, how ifs and ever, had they said, people, get it together, gather your signatures, let's figure out the total number of people that voted in the election and get that percentage. I think the number is 10%. That's what they have to have in the way of signatures. I could be wrong on the number. You get those signatures, you get to start a recall. And trust me, Kemp and Raffensperger, they would have done whatever was necessary because they want to stay in office. But Perdue and Loeffler did not want to put that idea into the heads of the voters because they know it would work. So whatever Trump has got in place to force Georgia to come up with the right number, it should be done because our country as we know it is at stake. And, we cannot sit back and allow this to happen. Now, I say this to everyone. Should Trump not become the victor, we still have an opportunity to purge rhinos. And why would that be important for the last 2 years of Biden? It would be important because we would actually stop the nefarious activities that are taking place by having the Senate and keeping the word out about what the people in DC are doing to them, letting the people know. Because if we don't, the rhinos are going to say, we had to do it because everybody has to wear a mask. They're shutting down again. So we have to do this bill to get the people back to work, back to school, back to everything, mandatory vaccines in order to ensure that that's where it's headed. That's where it's headed. Now you may think I'm joking, but if you go back and all the way to the compromise of 1877, where rhinos were born, it's insidious. Leave us alone with the Negroes in the South and remove your troops, and we will stop fighting the change that took place after we lost the Civil War. That's the compromise of 1877. And I can go on and on and on, all the way up through history today. It is not improbable, certainly not impossible, for our government. I heard Hank Sullivan say earlier today, we no longer have a constitutional government with things that are taking place. When you cannot check, when you cannot trust the vote, you no longer have a constitutional government. So whatever they need to do to fix that thing down there in Georgia, they better get it right, because I'm telling you, be on them. I'm going to go John the Baptist on them, talking about recalls, the whole 9 yards. Thank you.
All right, Derrick. Thank you very much. Catherine Bernard, I see that you wanted to come in on this piece, huh?
Well, I put my hand down because I want to hear what Scott and Geraldine and other folks have to say. But I do want us to foreground the possibility that, we all know shady stuff happened, but we also saw the 2018 results with Kemp and Abrams and how very, very close that was. And we really have to prepare ourselves that, even if you get rid of all the fraud, that Georgia actually voted for Biden. And is that the never Trumpers who were just silent about it? Is it just the independent leaning people breaking for Biden? But certainly the discussion that I've heard in my neighborhood has really, the rhinos have done their damage. And I'm trying not to use that word. I'm not as enthusiastic about it as Derrick is. They have done so much damage to people's conception of a Republican in Georgia that I find myself, thinking, how can we distinguish ourselves from those people, and calling them the rhinos when they're the ones who occupy, the positions like David Ralston, et cetera. I do want, I find myself thinking about how, when we're talking with our neighbors, how do we distinguish ourselves from what they expect when they think of a Republican, when they think of David Ralston or, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue with just that ridiculous stunt. I couldn't agree more that was a completely inappropriate, it was bad from a strategic level. It was bad from sort of a moral, political level. By all means, demand the hand recount, but to ask them to step down, I do worry that these people are choosing to make Republicans a punchline with the average independent-minded voter in Georgia. And, that's something that the people on this call would never be involved in, the people in this group. And that's why I voted for Derrick Grayson. That's why, Brian Slowinski is somebody that I told my friends about too. And so again, we can't put all our hopes on, Trump was cheated in Georgia. We have to gird our loins and recognize that this may have been a referendum on the Republican Party.
That's very true, and I can understand the rhino not necessarily being in the tip of the tongue, but I've heard it best said that there are as many political parties as there are individual people, and that is that just there's a margin of error somewhere where either we lean to the conservatism or towards liberalism. Brian Slowinski, we're talking about the Senate race and whether it should be recounted along with the presidential. What do you think about it, Brian?
I think I want to give you some numbers. Let me put on my spectacles because I don't see very well anymore. Up close to numbers. If you look at the three candidates that are the millionaire candidates that would not debate anybody else, they got 78% of the vote. Okay, but if you look at all the other candidates, those are the ones who actually are working for Georgia. It's 21.3%. That would have been third place because Doug Collins had 19.9%, Kelly Loeffler had 25.9%, and Raphael Warnock had 32.9%. So think about this, other candidates, is that we actually got 21% of the vote against the millionaire candidates with hardly any money. So think about that and be strong about that. And quite honestly, now we need to start going after the people that are involved in the process, like Mr. Grayson said. I would like to see Mr. Raffensperger actually recalled, the Secretary of State. Okay, because what he did with his mailing out is wrong. It's malfeasance on his part, and I think that he needs to be challenged. He could be challenged in a Republican primary. Because he will also be up in 2 years. He could be challenged on the Republican side. Someone from the Libertarians could also challenge him. Also, a Democrat could challenge him. But quite honestly, he needs to be recalled. And I think that's what needs to happen there. And, we need to keep their feet in the fire. If we do that, we have a shot to keep this country a republic. If we don't keep their feet in the fire and we drop the ball here, they're going to take it over.
So Candace, and I appreciate that, Brian. Candace, let me come back to you for a second. Let's spin this in. What if this attempt, and I've heard this a couple times, what if this is the attempt to break the American right and value in voting? What if this is a projection of what the future is to look like, right? So let's call uncontrolled chaos right here, right now, and a projection for what is yet to come. We're looking at this from the perspective of, 20 years ago, these are normal common names. Nobody pictured Trump coming, right? What does this look like 4 years from now? What if this is an attempt to break the Americans' drive to be involved in elections?
It absolutely is. I mean, I've heard that in 16, Obama really didn't win. Not 16, in 12, Obama didn't really win. Then I heard in 16 that the program failed on Hillary, and that's how Trump went in. Then I heard that Abrams used it, and Kent was Secretary of State, so he fixed it. And so they owed each other, so she couldn't sue him because they would both be in trouble. I've heard all kind of rumors. I'm telling you, I've heard it this week. If it's out there, I've heard it. And is it true? I mean, usually there's some truth to everything, but people right now, we're so skeptical. We don't believe anything. We as an American people, I feel like that I can't trust the system. I don't trust the votes. And like Brian's talking about the percent that's on paper, I don't trust it because I watch my own numbers go up and down. So I don't trust it. I feel like it's ridiculous that as a public school educator, we do standardized testing to the nth degree. We have test security. We have a valid test. Integrity is impeccable. Teachers go to prison if they cheat. Administrators go to prison. They have for eraser marks. It is so controlled. But yet our voting system that people died for, that people fought for, that took years to get women to vote, that got to get people of color to vote. But yet we just are flipping about it. Oh yeah, I think it shows you already voted. Oh, let me just clear it out. You vote again. Oh, you're dead from 1800. I'm still scanning your ballot. I mean, it's ludicrous to me that in this day and age of technology that we cannot get a fair and just election. It is ridiculous. And if we think that this was accidental, we're stupid. It wasn't accidental. If we think this is the first time this happened, then we're stupid. It's not. This isn't the first time. I don't know how Trump got in 16 because they sure didn't want him. Nobody did. But somehow he got in. Praise God. He got in, probably a miracle intervention, supernatural. And this year it showed out. And so thank the Lord, he's still president for 2 months and he can do something about it, and hope and pray that he does so that America has a chance. Because if it doesn't happen and our system's not fixed, everything we're talking about right now is a moot point. Because we're going to be in a socialist society, and then our dollar's going to not be the world currency, and we're going to be a third world nation. That's what's going to happen. And I am a very positive person. I'm not a doom and gloom person, but that is reality. And that is where we've gotten. And the rhinos have helped get us there in Georgia. And I'm going to tell you, somebody said a while ago, I think it was Catherine, that maybe we really are a blue state. We're not a blue state. We're a red state. I've been to 159 counties in this state. We are red. We are blood red. Okay. We're in the Bible Belt. My husband's a worship pastor and a teacher, but he said, this is embarrassing. We are Georgia. We're in the Bible Belt. We are Christians. We are Christians. How in the world do we have this many people voting for Biden? Bottom line. And you know what? That many people did not vote for Biden. It did not happen in Georgia. And I know that it didn't happen. I know it didn't. And so either we're going to get it fixed this time or we're screwed. And I don't use that word, but that's the truth.
Oh, such commentary, it makes you wonder how American Idol can count so many votes so fast in the last 60 seconds of a show to announce the world's best singer. Josie Cruz, same question comes to you. It's Veterans Day, right? So I'm in communication with some of my battle buddies and former soldiers that are all overseas that sent ballots home. I mean, if everybody would just take for a second, we had the opportunity to go to a polling location, if it was available to us, right? To be able to go through the process of turning in our ballot. These individuals are downrange and had to fill out ballots and hope that they were secure to go all the way across the world, halfway around the globe, to be over here and counted. Imagine what they're feeling as to whether their ballot even made it to the U.S. Josie, what do you think about that?
This absentee ballot was created specific for that situation. But what we had lately with this COVID-19 and people being scared, I consider that is not an excuse to go in person to do the voting. Like most of us went the day before the election. I did it a week before. The Constitution says that the first Tuesday of November is the election day. Okay, so there is why is in this way the Constitution is not being followed by regular citizens who are home, who they can take 6 feet distance in the line, because that's what happened when I went to vote early, and allow these absentee ballots to go for everybody and not specific for the group that you were describing before, the Danny. Those ones who are, in our shore, in boats or ships, or working in other part, our military, our soldiers too. So I believe this is, um, we say it in Spanish, uh, the system implemented that is brand new, by having 3 different proof. I consider it was good, but these socialists and these communists, these new world order people, they went around it and found another way to mess us up as a nation, to mess us up as a state, and with the help, because I still have more questions. I still have more questions, and I'm asking also the leaders of both political parties, how come this happened? Did you guys agree to do this? Why did you agree to do this? I mean, what is behind all this? And there is, every time there is something is being talked about, there is another question come on my mind. So here I am, somebody looking at the whole situation like I am on the bleachers, eating popcorn and looking at the game in a different point of view, and analyzing and having questions. So some questions are being answered, but I know some of them are going to be answered probably in 1 week. Thank you, Dan.
Josie, thank you. So, Derrick, I'm going to come to you. We're going to start our next part of the segment. Let's start a fight. Newsmax, CNN, Fox. Which one are you going with these days? I personally am a new subscriber to Newsmax. And so if anybody knows anybody there, I'd be interested in taking a spot on one of their shows, taking us a roundtable online with them. Derrick, what do you think? What's going on with this media game?
Well, I don't do the mainstream media news. I listen to Tucker Carlson on YouTube. Fox, they allow some things to take place that are just unbelievable to me. But I have always reminded people, anybody that watches my posts, Fox is owned by a corporation as well. Now, how Tucker is still able to be on the air is beyond me. But there are times when he names names. Print, I go with the Epoch Times. They're just this and they're not. Yes, it was started by a Chinese dissident who hated what was going on in China. Mm-hmm. Wants to expose it, came to the US, California, unfortunately, and started this paper. And anything that I have been posting on from the Epoch Times, you can find another story that will either corroborate it, or you will see where it has been twisted by CNN and MSNBC. They are so toxic, I can't even listen to them. So I go to, I'll listen to Newsmax. I listen to Tucker Carlson. Neil Cavuto used to be pretty good, but I see his slant is changing. And there's another guy, I can't recall his name right now, heavyset guy. He was pretty good as well. But I want to remind you all of something. Back in March, almost 2 times a week, and in many of my posts at the bottom, when this pandemic started, I had one man, our economy, one election. Well, what has happened? The one man was Donald Trump. We know that they do not want Donald Trump, even Republicans or rhinos, because Donald Trump is getting in the way. This was about one man. Our economy, what happened? They used the virus to cause us to shut down and make people suffer. 3 years ago, I made a video saying more people will need to suffer in order to see what's happening. And that is true. And people were suffering, and unconstitutionally, the government tacked on a bunch of more debt to mail out for the people. And then Democrats decided to blame Trump for it not happening the last time, and the Republicans were roadblocking it, saying we're not going to bail out the failed cities. What difference does it make? If we're getting rid of the Federal Reserve anyway, according to many, go ahead and give them the money. It's our money anyway. Let it be done and let Trump be the hero. But none of them wanted that. So that's the one, our economy part. Make us suffer, blame Trump even more, and then one election. I knew that there was something going on with all of those ballots being mailed out. That was it. All three of the things that I have been posting for quite a while came to pass. And guess what? Every last bit of it was preventable, but it was not. It was not prevented. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, on the moving forward, Brian, coming over to you, what I'm trying to target here is where we're at with the media, in its influence. So some people are diehard, left or, right televised, informed individuals. And what is the accountability process for that? And so Alex and Catherine, if you guys will kind of be on standby to come in with the legal side of that. But Brian, what are you seeing with the media and its influence over our elections?
Well, I think that the media is bought and paid for, basically owned by 6 corporations that own basically almost all the media here in the United States, except for the smaller institutions. The whole point of this is not only is it the media, but it's also the big tech that comes in there, and Google has 500,000 hits a day or more, and they pretty much put up what they want to be the news. Anybody that has anything different that is contrary to it, they just bury in their search engines. So I think that we as a people, we need to start actually verifying. We need to get back to being critical thinkers again. We don't have that anymore. It's not taught in school. We need to be critical thinkers, and we need to hold our elected officials accountable. And we're not doing that. We've dropped the ball as citizens, and we need to start from the city level, the county level, state level, all the way up. We got to start making our elected officials accountable again, and we're not doing that. We've dropped the ball big time.
I agree, and God help us the day that we would actually be restored that power in the current environment that we're at. Candace Taylor, what say you about the influence of the media and how it impacts our elections?
I want to say one thing that I wanted to say a while ago and I forgot. When we look at our state and we look at the elected officials in the state, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the secretary of state, all the way down, they're all red. You don't flip a state blue like that. You may have one or two that start, and then you end up with half red, half blue. But you just don't flip a whole state blue like that. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Our whole demographics of our state has not changed that much. I meant to say that a while ago. Okay, so back to this question. I personally had started Parler back maybe in June when I was seeing some censorship of my own stuff on Facebook and on Twitter. And I was kind of put in Twitter jail one time, and just my post wouldn't go through. I started a Parlor, and I mean, I only have like less than 200 followers on Parlor. It's just not there yet. And so when I have 10,000 on Facebook and, 2 to 5 on the other medias, Instagram and Twitter, you can't just flip to Parlor. So I would love to do that. I would, and that we or whatever it is, me, I would love to just switch to that, but it's just not that simple. And they know that. And that's why they kind of do whatever they want to do, because they know we have to have social media to get our message out. And, the live videos that you can do on Facebook and on Instagram are very beneficial when you're doing a campaign. So it's hard, but I would like to see them switch. I think Candace Owens is doing a wonderful thing, suing them on the fact checkers. I've been fact checked several times, and it really ticks me off. And there are a lot of things going around. Like I said earlier, there are conspiracy theories. I've heard a lot of them. I'm hearing them. They're sent to me by the hundreds. I can't even read them all. I have hundreds of videos in my inbox I haven't watched. I don't have time to watch all of it. But there are all these theories going around. I get that. But that's part of free speech. And we have the right to hear people speak and hear their voice. And so I don't like the censorship at all. I think, we're allowing people to burn down businesses and buildings, and we're giving them room and space to do that, which is totally illegal and criminal, but we're being shut down from getting our views and our opinions out. And it's absolutely illegal, and I can't stand it. About Fox, I do watch Tucker. I'm like Derrick, I watched Tucker. I watched Hannity last night just because Doug was on there with Matt Gaetz, and I wanted to hear what they said about the recount. So I did watch that, and they called out the governor pretty harshly. It was embarrassing for Georgia. It really was. But anyway, I did watch that last night. I don't normally watch Hannity. I think that he supports rhinos. I used to like him a couple years ago, but since I've started in my election, I've gotten aggravated with him supporting rhinos. I feel like Tucker is pretty straightforward, and I do like him. So I watched Fox for that one thing. But I have started watching Newsmax too, like everybody else, and kind of keeping up with it. Printed media is more difficult. At local newspapers, I know that sounds stupid, but I'll go online and read them in the counties that I know are conservative and get some news there. But I mean, really, like the AJC and the Washington Post and all these other ones are so liberal, and they've honestly been so disrespectful to me. I know they have been to Derrick and Josie and Brian. They've been so disrespectful, and maybe at events and them cover the front runners and never mention it and do an interview with me, but never say anything that I say, because I don't say their narrative. It's just been very frustrating. So I don't support any of them. And I think that it's sad that our people, they do. I think that most people, they're busy with their lives, and it's not that they want to be ignorant. It's just they're busy and they don't know how to search and get another source. And it's like whatever's the fastest at your fingertips, the most accessible, they pull up and they watch it and they read it. So it's a hard thing. I mean, the media is out of control. They are completely out of control. They think they can name the president-elect. They're totally out of control. I don't know what to do to fix it besides shut them off.
Absolutely. Very interesting take. Alex Johnson, legal ramifications for media. Because it's entertainment media, does that make them exempt of any accountability?
Well, I think when you mention entertainment, I think that's where people are not attuned to the difference between entertainment and political posturing and manipulation and actual fact and what's going on. Now, one quick thing I wanted to mention, just because I know that Collins has been mentioned and Kemp. I've thought ever since Collins declared, and I just want to say it now, that I think that from the beginning, I mean, Doug Collins, I think, would have been fine becoming a U.S. senator, but I think the whole plan was that if he lost, which it looks like he did, that his whole plan all along was to find a reason to primary or get the name ID to then primary Governor Kemp in the future, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's what this has all been about, and he's going to do that and probably cost the state a Republican governor in the future. But when it comes to the entertainment side of things, I think that what people need to remember is that these social media companies, the media companies, that's what they're there for. They're there to make money. And while in US history, there have been times when content has been regulated on TV by declaring it some sort of, the FCC gained jurisdiction and turned around and censored content on media on a lot of major networks. I don't think that's what we should be hoping for in the future. I mean, government regulation and control of means of communication is bad, period. You do not want to turn the keys over to the government. And that is what a lot of people may be tempted to fall into. I think that when you have these other entities out there and you have a competitive free market, it will work itself out. It may not do it as quickly as some people would like, but when you look at Facebook right now, there is a strong move away from it by a lot of conservatives. I don't know if that's the right move or not, but I do think that having competition and having these competing avenues for communication, that's what we want. That's what we need, because without that, you start having establishment entities controlling it. So I think that's where we are. And I think that the government in general, the First Amendment, the way that should be interpreted and applied is that, the government won't be restricting speech. So it's up to us to figure out truth from lies, and that's where more knowledge and awareness comes in. And some of this electoral posturing, I mean, all of us or some of us may see through it, but when you look at the public, a lot of people really do look at it at face value, and that's where we need more people to be educated and informed. I mean, today I heard from someone who helped liberate a concentration camp in World War II, and a lot of people don't even know that the Holocaust happened. And I mean, when people aren't educated about the greatest atrocity or one of the greatest atrocities in the 20th century, I think that's where we really need to be worried.
So they start in the schools. I see you, Derrick. I'm going to come back to you, Catherine. Derrick, go ahead.
I just quickly want to add, I heard Alex talking about Doug Collins would have been all right as a senator. Understand something. Doug Collins and Mike Lee are responsible for big tech being able to silence these corrupt companies. Being able to silence conservative voices is what I meant to say. It is he did an expose on it, Section 230 protection, which allows them to shut down anything that they feel is anti-liberal, and that's what they have been doing. When Tucker did the expose in June, calling out Mike Lee and Doug Collins, because he said these are the guys that made this possible. Doug Collins then in July put up a bill on his website, giving the impression that he had submitted it, or sponsored it. So when you go to the actual bill at whitehouse.gov, Doug Collins' name is nowhere on it. It was sponsored by somebody else. Doug wasn't even a co-sponsor. And to add insult to injury, nobody talked about the bill. Nobody tried to push the bill. It was just put out there to shut up the critics. And guess what? The Rhino supporters fell right in line with it. Oh, Doug's not responsible. But he is. When they put out the story on Hunter Biden, that protection, 230, that is what allowed them to do it. That's what allowed them to do it, and they cannot be held accountable for it. Doug Collins did that. Mike Lee did that. That could have been prevented, but again, it was not. Thank you.
Thank you, Derrick. Catherine Bernard.
Obviously, we're all thinking about the media question a lot, and I think Alex pointed out that, there's not always going to be a good legal solution, particularly for those of us who are against big government, because whenever you're suing somebody, you are demanding that the government come in and take action against them. And, we can be mad at Facebook, we can be mad at Google, and certainly there are problematic linkages that we need to get into, crony, subsidy, all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, it's a very bad look for the people who are supposed to be the avatars of freedom and justice to be running to the very government that we are criticizing, trying to get other people shut down. So I think we've really got to set ourselves a very high standard, because again, we are in a media ecosystem of headlines now. We can complain about it, but I like to think of it as when Thomas Paine was writing his pamphlets back in 1770s and trying to get the colonists whipped up for the American Revolution. People said, pamphlets? How can you discuss anything of substance in a pamphlet? You need a full-length volume and treatise to be able to get at the philosophical ideas. And I think what we're dealing with now with Twitter and headlines and everything getting pushed at us on the phones, that is just what we are dealing with. And so in a world of so many battles for lovers of liberty and the Constitution, it seems to me like that may be one that we want to pick in a more positive way by looking at how we can push earned media towards what's legitimate. And I actually have two examples, because I know that, we've been a little doom and gloom tonight, which after the past week and a half, I think anybody can understand. But there were at least two really good pieces of news on Tuesday. One of them, y'all have heard me talk about the Brookhaven referendum in my little city in Atlanta, where the mayor was trying to get himself unlimited terms. So not only did we win, we got a no vote, 55% of people saw through the trick. We even got a really great headline in the AJC. It was, Brookhaven mayor will not get unlimited terms after failed referendum. So it was two little jabs at the mayor right there in the headline. And so again, this is not to say the AJC is always fair or even fair most of the time, just that in this one example, we were able to craft a narrative and create it within Brookhaven, and it managed to resonate in that way. I'd also like to point out that, prohibition was on the ballot all across the country on Tuesday. There were numerous bills regarding decriminalization of various substances and other kind of drug war issues. And those were overwhelmingly passed in red areas, in blue areas, in purple areas. And to me, that's a message that humanity loves freedom. People don't want the government restricting the activities of peaceful people. They want freedom. And so for constitutional conservatives, this is fantastic news. And so, while absolutely we have to criticize the flaws in the voting system, we have to look at, all the problems, we don't want to be painted as only the naysayers, because we are the ones who actually have the positive vision of America as what it is supposed to be, the shining city on the hill that is against socialism, that is still a chance for everyone to have, liberty and justice for all. And so I know it's been a bummer, all the results and frankly, the open negativity towards Trump. Even though I do think that Georgia might actually have gone blue, one thing that makes me suspicious is Florida and Ohio are always talked about as national bellwethers, and both of those went very heavily for Trump this year. And so I think that makes it, people should not be surprised that we are questioning whether or not a blue Georgia is actually a real result. But kind of the last thing I wanted to add tonight, of which a little bit more of a positive spin as well. Regardless of what happens, I do think that when there's a close election and you've got those independents thinking, what do I do? What do I do? Americans have an anti-incumbent bias, and it is a healthy bias. It's not strong enough, and certainly we want to see people like Josie over incumbents like Hank Johnson. And I wish I was in the 4th district and could have voted that way. But I do think that, Americans like to vote for change. We like to vote for the next thing. And so that actually does reflect a skepticism of government. And just because it ended up potentially biting Trump this time, again, overall, I don't think that's a bad thing for constitutional conservatives. I think it reflects, people actually are suspicious of government. And if a guy's been in there for 4 years and we still have a big old national debt and a lot of problems, they want to hold somebody accountable for it. So I agree with, what everyone's been saying, but I wanted to add that little kind of, positive spin.
And Catherine, for that, we thank you. Well said. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful closing statements there. Josie, I saw your hand up. Coming to you. No?
She already answered. Thank you.
Oh, she already answered that. Okay, I understand. Okay, so moving forward, folks. That being said, all right, the gentleman down here on the Galaxy. You're muted, sir. Yeah, he's muted. Everybody's muted at the moment. I can't. All right, while we work on those technical difficulties, coming back over to you, Brian Sawinski. We've talked about a lot of stuff. Catherine's right. It seems like a very doom and gloom type of process throughout the night. But there is a constitutional victory in all of this for diehard constitutional believers. And that is maybe there's another way to look at all of this, that rhinos and others were exposed more now than they ever have been before. What say you?
Yes, they were, but a lot of them got reelected, like, for example, Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. And others. I think that the rhinos come and support Trump when it's in their best interest. But now when it's a chance to do what they need to do, they're turning on him or they're not supporting him right now. And the interesting thing, what I think is interesting is, where you have in the current Senate race, now you have Perdue and Loeffler coming out, and they're trying to blame the Republican Secretary of State and the Republican governor, and they're trying to show that they have some independence from what's going on. But I see it for what it is. I see it as just posturing, quite honestly. They obviously whoever gets elected in Loeffler Warnock thing should definitely be primaried, whoever they are, and hopefully be primaried either by a more of a common sense Democrat or a constitutional Republican. I think that's what needs to happen. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. But again, I like the fact that Catherine was talking about, well, we kind of go blue here a little bit, but we really don't. I'm more on Candace's side here when you don't just change all the way over to blue in one election. It's normally you'll lose some of your lower level seats first, whether it be like maybe the school superintendent, maybe lieutenant governor, but you don't all of a sudden lose the state on the top of the ticket. And I question that. I really question that too. I also question the fact that a lot of these votes, all of a sudden, like for example, in Fulton County, they, at 4 o'clock in the morning, they say, "Oh yeah, we found 40,000 votes." No, that's when we need our court system to actually say, "Wait a minute here. We need a fair vote. We need a transparent vote, and we need to stop all this." It's crazy what's going on. And I just hope.
I think a lot of it's going to unravel, and we'll see a lot more to come. I think we've got some smart players out there representing us well. They're just not as public in the front. Jim, I see that you've got your stuff fixed, and you can come on.
Yes, sir. I do believe, and thank you, Danny, for hosting. I do believe we all really innately know what's going on here. Not all of us are lawyers, and much love to y'all that are, because you're great lawyers. But we all innately know what's going on. And I'm going to DC on Saturday, and just gonna show my face. So with that, I'll let y'all continue.
Jim, thank you very much for your contribution this evening. Coming back over to you, Derrick Grayson. So we're talking about maybe there is a good way to look at this. Is there more exposure now than ever? And I can tell you from personal political experience, 2016, 18, all of these earlier sets on the back end of my military career, I never heard so many people coming out exposing the elitist movements, exposing rhinos and calling people what they were. It's a massive traction of verbal accountability at this point, but maybe this is the breaking bridge that takes us to actual, legal and physical, we the people accountability. What say you?
Well, I touched on that earlier when I mentioned a constitutional coalition, and I named names of people I would like to see run: Brian Slowinski, Alex Johnson, Catherine Bernard, Josie Cruz, Candace Taylor, Annette Davis Jackson, yourself. I want to see us get together and have just one or two campaign managers that we share, and we cover Georgia. Scott will be the one guy that I want to be at the campaign manager side. And then, my team is still in place, and I'm sure you guys have other people that are still in place. And we target those rhinos. We target Kemp. We target 4 or 5 congressional districts, and somebody needs to run against Loeffler because those seats are coming up again in 2000. The exposure has been done. We all know what's going on. All we have to do next is educate. Look, 50 plus thousand people voted for me. I probably only shook 500 hands. That's huge, and that means we reached some people. We need to start educating people. And in this coalition, we don't run against each other. We band together and we take out some rhinos. We go John the Baptist on them. That is what I'm talking about. That's what needs to happen, Danny. It needs to happen now. We need to start making noise now.
Well, Derrick, I think this table right here is a good start. Built attraction on the forward, and I'm sure the follow on is going to continue. And for that, I thank all of my panelists for constantly joining us and bridging the gap of truth at a table where all of us are simply vested in the American way of life. Josie Cruz, I see you.
Well, we're gonna have the governor seat open. We're gonna have the Senate seat open, right? At least one. We're gonna have some congressional districts open. They need to be challenged. So we need to, like Derrick says, we need to coordinate and attack and help us each other. We have to help each other like we did this time. Um, my campaign helped a little bit Derrick, but Derrick helped my campaign more. Uh, and I'm thankful and grateful for that. And I do have a message for the rhinos. The message that I got for the rhinos in Georgia, I'm going to focus only in Georgia. You will be the first one to go when it's time for the socialists to get rid of all those ones who helped them out to get in power. They're going to tell you, thank you for your help, you got to go. So what I'm saying with this is the way that Cuba, Venezuela, and Bolivia is on the way to, how how these countries were lost is because those behavior that the rhinos are showing here in United States were the same behavior over there. And I can see it in here. They sabotage campaign, they block you, they use some group to come against your campaign or you. In this case, I can talk about my own experience. Using a group, sabotage. They didn't give me no donors list. They didn't give me Republican members of the congressional district number 4 for me to at least to call them and say, hey, I am your candidate. Please vote for me. You know. So all those little things in a month, let's say a month, contribute to help out Hen Johnson that by the Republican help him out, but they basically attack me, sabotage me, and try to destroy my campaign. They were trying as much as they could for me to give up at the last minute. And today, I am one of the candidates that I put my letter out there saying that I am not conceding. I'm not going to concede to Hen Johnson until we finish the whole process of investigation, recounting, voting recounting, and everything that needs to be done. If it has to go to the Supreme Court or to the Senate, I am not conceding. Why? Because I consider this a fraudulent election. It's fraud. That's why I have so many questions. Why so many district candidates, Republican candidates, they concede? Why? We still are waiting for results. Why are they thinking in doing a runoff in January when the results still not coming up? I mean, it's so many questions. By when well, we have lawyers here. We have Alex. We have Catherine. So those are many questions that probably we can talk about that in the next meeting next week. To clarify a little bit those questions. Thank you,
Yeah.
Danny.
Absolutely, Josie. And I'm sure next week we're going to have a ton to talk about as more of these things develop, throughout the courts, the battles that are going on, what the news is going to rate up in the next round of all of these things. Folks, tonight, you have joined us in a conversation here at the roundtable where we've talked about our opinions, our approaches of the media's handling of our elections and their ability to call the shot. We've also talked about rhinos, the establishment movers in each and individual states across our country and our nation where they are misrepresenting the people. Could this be a moment where we are finally turning out of the years of suffrage as the American people, as Derrick would place it, and maybe we're coming to the next wave of an American awakening? We have been stuck in a bubble, a place where we have our need for news. What is news? Is it something that is true, fair, accurate, and balanced? Or is it simply entertainment? You must decide that for yourself. That is an individual research-based obligation that you have for yourself. It is our unwindling education, the lack thereof. Our kids are not being educated as to the processes in which these things happen in their grade school years. So what we wind up having is a society sitting at a round table like this, where many of us are constantly learning new things, and we're walking in streets where people are completely oblivious to the processes that are taking place around them. This all comes from familial divide. A house that is broken on the inside comes out, pours broken onto the streets. And as that happens, we're watching our society constantly shift. We have gone from simply knowing our purpose to living a life full of power and pleasure, which we now identify as purpose. That is what your rhinos have done. That is what your elite establishment has done, whether it be blue or whether it be red. They have all found power and pleasure as their purpose. So, ladies and gentlemen, my American brothers and sisters, especially my fellow Georgians, in the words of Mr. Derrick Grayson himself, I am begging you to wake up and go John the Baptist somebody. Folks, until next time, we thank you for joining us here at the Round Table. We will see you next Wednesday. From all of my guest panelists here, thank you for your time tonight. And on behalf of me and my family down here in the Low Country, we bid you